I'm Teresa Utheralt, and I lead the sales team for Amazon Shipping. And Amazon Shipping is our parcel delivery service for brands. We use Amazon's logistics network to pick up your orders from your DTC channels and deliver them to your customer's doorstep. Today, I'm excited to be on the stage with Nate Skiver to talk all things parcel and home delivery. Nate, you have an impressive resume. Now, you've spent 17 years running parcel programs for large retail brands like Abercrombie & Fitch, Gap, Limited Brands. And then in 2019, you started LPF Spend Management, where you advise retail brands on their e-commerce delivery. LPF stands for a level playing field, and I think you have done an incredible job just with your presence on LinkedIn. You have 30,000 followers on LinkedIn, which is really incredible, and you are one of the most effective thought leaders on e-commerce delivery. There's been a ton of change in this industry in the last 2 years, and you are publishing content almost daily, helping brands navigate all of it and really demystifying and simplifying things that just seem very complicated. We've hired a bunch of people on our team this year, and I know when we're onboarding them, we tell them to follow you, and they love reading your content. So if you're an e-commerce brand out there and you care about delivery, and you should, I encourage you to follow Nate on LinkedIn.
Well, thank you for the amazing introduction, Teresa, and thank you for all the kind words about my content. It is fantastic that your team gains value from it. I'm really excited to be here today to be able to talk with you all. It's my first Accelerate attending or speaking, and I get to talk about e-commerce delivery, which has been basically about a 20-year obsession of mine. So thank you for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Well, e-commerce delivery is a critical capability for e-commerce businesses, and if brands want to grow their e-commerce business, then they really should obsess about it and obsess about getting it right. So I'm excited to talk about that too. At Amazon, we like to obsess about e-commerce delivery. But before we get started, I have to ask you, how did you go and decide to go off on your own and start LPF?
Well, it was a decade-long process. I first thought about consulting in 2009. I was working for Abercrombie & Fitch, managing their parcel program, and I had an opportunity to work on a project alongside a parcel consultant, negotiating carrier contracts. And it was then that I first thought that this is something that I would like to do someday. But the operative word was someday. It did not happen fast. It was one of those things that took almost 10 years. And I started to immerse myself in parcel. And keep in mind, this was 10 to 15 years ago as I'm building this experience. But during that time, parcel really started to become more than just delivering a package. It started to become more than just carriers, rates, and services. It was becoming a core part of the e-commerce delivery experience. And at that point, that's when I realized that I wanted to be able to share this experience that I had gained and the interest that I had in both parcel and e-commerce with more than just one company. And so in 2019, I decided to go out on my own and start LPF, which was 10 years after that first someday thought.
Well, that's a great story, so thank you for sharing it. And I'm glad that you acted on those someday thoughts. Selfishly, we get to benefit from you being a public figure and teaching us all, because if you were running a parcel program at one of these big brands, no one would get to benefit from that. I'm sure this story resonates with many of you in the audience. I'm sure we've got a lot of entrepreneurs in the audience, and it's who've acted on those someday dreams, so that's really a great thing. And as you know from your past roles in logistics, brands face a ton of complexity managing logistics and supply chain, right? And as their business grows, that complexity grows and maybe even grows exponentially. And certainly in this space, like transportation, delivery services have gotten more expensive over the years. Just in the last decade, ground shipping rates have increased, but also the economics of it has become more complex. And for brands investing in e-commerce, a great delivery experience is kind of a core expectation for the customer. And our research shows that 85% of customers who have a poor delivery experience won't return to that seller. So it's really important for brands to get this right. In your experience, Nate, with the different brands that you've worked with, how important has delivery experience been for them?
I think delivery is as important as a brand chooses to make it. If delivery isn't made a core part of the customer experience, then for that brand, it's not important. It's a line item on the P&L, it's an afterthought, it's really a means to an end. But I believe it should be a core part of the customer experience, and that's something that I think we've seen with many of the large retailers in the US. Amazon, of course, Walmart, Target, Dick's Sporting Goods have all used delivery to drive conversion and increase revenue, build repeat customer purchases, and also customer loyalty. And they've done it by obsessing over some of the key elements of the delivery experience. One is having a clear and precise estimated delivery date on the product detail page and, of course, in checkout. They've also focused on providing simple, clearly stated delivery and pickup options, which resonate with customers. And finally, they've executed on that plan to meet the customer promise date, and that usually includes fast delivery.
Well, that seems like a really great strategy for a retailer to adopt, but I'm going to ask a question that might be on the minds of some people in the audience. Do you need to be a big retail brand to provide value in delivery?
Great question, and the short answer is no. Brands of all sizes can use delivery to drive value in their business. And there are some important reasons why that is the case. One is that many still don't actually prioritize delivery. You see it all the time. If you're browsing, some retailers will provide a very conservative delivery date range, or they don't provide something that's really precise. And when that happens, you really just aren't showing the value of delivery, at least earlier in the process. 2 or 3 day delivery is something that's usually, at least from some brands, only offered as a paid expedited option, instead of offering it as part of standard delivery, at least when it's available. And so this neglect of delivery by some retailers actually creates an opportunity for everyone else to prioritize delivery and really drive value for their business.
Well, that's a great point. It seems like because so many retail brands might actually be ignoring this, like this could be a really interesting opportunity. So if you're an emerging brand, how do you capitalize on this opportunity?
Brands can capitalize on the opportunity by creating a delivery strategy with their customers in mind, and then working backwards from there to put the right resources in place to actually execute on that strategy. And the good news is there are plenty of options to be able to do that, whether it's trying to find delivery providers or the right technology solution to optimize delivery speed and cost. Resources are available for small and medium-sized businesses to level the playing field.
And what examples are there out there that you would point out to the audience, brands that are really focusing on this and capitalizing on the opportunity, to use your term?
There are a few brands that come to mind. Grunt Style, Altered State, Uncommon Goods. In particular, Grunt Style does a very, very good job of providing an estimated delivery date on the product detail page, or PDP. They also, right near the add to bag button, have a view all shipping options link. That expands, pops up, and then lists all of the shipping options, and each of those have a very clear EDD. By doing that, they actually provide something to the customers with clear expectations while they're browsing, and not wait until checkout, and I think that helps to really drive some results.
So you mentioned estimated date of delivery or EDD a lot, and I notice that comes up in your content a lot on LinkedIn. Why do you think that's so important?
I may be alone on this, I don't know, but I feel like EDD is the most underutilized feature in e-commerce delivery. It might seem straightforward, just provide an estimated delivery date, but there are plenty of retailers who don't prioritize that, don't focus on it. But when retailers do, it provides certainty in the buying process early on. It also allows customers to buy with confidence. So if a brand provides a clear EDD on the PDP or at latest in checkout and then delivers on that EDD, that's critical, you have to hit the EDD, then it creates loyalty. I think another benefit of an estimated delivery date is it enhances the value of fast delivery, which, as most know, can improve conversion and revenue. Fast delivery, at least in my opinion, doesn't provide much value if a customer doesn't know about it before buying. And I think providing fast delivery, while it's helpful, if there isn't an EDD along with it, it's more of a surprise and delight strategy, which is, it's very 2015.
Well, that's a good way of putting it. I feel like 2015 is like the Triassic era of e-commerce, right? There's like life before COVID. But that is a really great example, right? Like a brand like Grunt Style, right? Like rendering this personalized EDD and all the shipping options on the product detail page. So as a customer, you're on that product detail page and you've got that transparency, that visibility. I mean, I'm going to share your hypothesis. I bet that really does help conversion and also, to your point, loyalty, repeat purchases. So that's a really, really great example of something that like any brand, right, in e-commerce could do. But I think like sometimes, I mean, you know, we've all been there before. Like there's a lot of complexity that people are navigating, right? And sometimes the hardest part is figuring out where to get started. And I feel like in supply chain in particular, the last few years have been really complicated. It's only when one or two pieces fail that you realize that maybe you've made some choices you need to change. And people are navigating a lot of complexity. And often you feel like there are disruptions that you have no control over, like the weather. And certainly that impacts like brands of all sizes, big, small, medium. So, but for an e-commerce brand in the audience that wants to get serious about this, wants to make it a superpower, how should they get started?
Well, I think to start, before getting into solutions, this sounds very simple, but you have to define what your needs are. And in order to do that, you can perform a gap analysis across some key areas like shipping cost, delivery speed, customer on-time performance, and shipping technology. And once you've identified those gaps, that's when you can start to explore specific solutions to actually close them. Let's just take shipping costs as an example. In order to actually influence shipping costs, you have to have visibility to it. And I'm a bit biased. I've been focused on parcel for a very long time. But to get that visibility, you might need a parcel spend management solution, something that tracks all the costs and that you can actually use to make decisions. So once you have that visibility, then you can start to focus on actually affecting cost. And there are three key ways to do that. One is negotiating carrier contracts, which is near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love it. One of the few people, I think. Exploring alternative carriers, and then also implementing shipping technology that optimizes cost and transit time. Each of these three areas are very complex, and it might be difficult to tackle any or all three of them. So you may need to actually engage external expertise to find the right solutions to close those gaps.
Now, I'm sure in the course of your work at LPF, you've worked with a lot of retail brands, helping them do that gap analysis and then coming up with a plan and a strategy, right, to close all those gaps. Can you share a specific example with the audience of a brand where you did that?
Sure. I worked with a jewelry retailer not too long ago that was trying to reduce shipping costs, maintain their delivery speed, and a portion of their volume was also seller fulfilled prime. And before the project, they had done a decent job, actually, of negotiating their carrier contracts. But they had been working with one carrier only for all of their volume for several years. And that ended up leading to some cost inefficiencies, or I guess opportunities. During the project, I helped them set specific goals for their cost and transit time. We evaluated alternative carriers, of course, negotiated carrier contracts, and then ultimately selected the right delivery partners for their program. And the results were pretty strong. It actually resulted in a 13% reduction in shipping cost. They added a new carrier for some of their less time-sensitive orders. And then they maintained their primary carrier to continue to handle the SFP volume.
Wow, that's pretty impressive. I mean, reducing shipping costs by 13%, that's huge. Shipping is an important line item, right, in the P&L, so that's a great outcome for that brand. Considering that, delivery is such a foundational piece of e-commerce, I think like choosing the delivery provider might be like a pretty big decision. What advice would you give sellers on how to approach that?
With selecting delivery providers, there's really two approaches you can take. One is a single carrier approach. Conversely, the other is a multi-carrier approach. And there is an old school way, or at least I think it's old school, of thinking that says working with one carrier is the best solution. You can consolidate all of your volume, get the best pricing, and it's just simple. And while that can still be true, I think in many cases, taking a multi-carrier approach can actually provide more value. Let's say a brand ships 300 orders every day. That's really not considered to be high volume at all by parcel carriers. And if you take a multi-carrier approach and you start to divide that volume over two or more carriers, it leads to some inefficiencies. Pricing won't be as strong, and it also adds complexity to the process. So in that case, that's probably an example where that's not enough volume to pursue multiple carriers. One carrier likely is going to be the best solution. But it's different, let's say, if a brand ships 3,000 orders per day. That's actually enough volume to start to explore alternative carriers and see if a multi-carrier approach can provide better value across different areas, be it delivery speed, shipping cost, or delivery reliability.
Okay, well, let's drill down into that multi-carrier approach. Let's say there's a brand determines that might be a good fit for them. How would they go about doing this? What would they expect to achieve from it? And what resources would they need to be able to implement that?
Well, the benefits really from a multi-carrier approach, there's intangible and tangible benefits. The tangible ones might be pretty intuitive. Lower shipping cost, which is a theme here, better delivery reliability, and at times, faster delivery. But to be able to identify these benefits, you have to go through an evaluation process with alternative carriers and then compare those carriers' capabilities and the costs to your current carriers. The intangible benefits may be not as obvious, but it provides operational flexibility, which I think in a dynamic environment like we're in now is very, very critical. And the flexibility can come in the form of being able to move volume from one carrier to another if, say, you get a surprise rate increase, which happens every once in a while from some carriers, or there's a service disruption. And so that provides flexibility, really, in the process. And then the other thing that it does is it creates competition, pricing competition between carriers, and that helps to drive down the cost. I think implementing a multi-carrier approach, it's not easy. It's not simple, but there are some solutions and resources that can help. One is a multi-carrier shipping solution or software. That solution is needed to print carrier labels, to perform rate shopping, and to select the optimal carrier service for each order. It also requires more sortation operationally to separate the packages for each carrier. And finally, you have to manage multiple carrier relationships and multiple carrier contracts. And so while all those things, it sounds kind of daunting, it is complex, really in many cases, if you do your due diligence, the benefits far outweigh the resources invested.
Okay, well, you've mentioned negotiating carrier contracts a few times, and that does seem complex. I wonder for the brands in the audience, if they wanted to go about doing that, renegotiate their contracts, what advice would you give them?
Let's see, how much time do we have? This might take a few minutes. So this is one I could talk about for a long time. I'll try to be a little more brief here, but it is very complex. And I've been doing this for 20 years. And from my experience, it's become more complex. It's changed more frequently in the past 5 years than it had in the prior 15. And one of those areas that keeps changing, keeps getting more complex, is surcharges. And surcharges are additional charges on a shipment that are associated with certain conditions, like delivering to a customer's home or delivering to a rural location. Based on my client projects, those surcharges can account for as much as 30 to 40% of total shipping costs. And they're increasing in complexity. Some carriers, not all, but some do increase them really frequently. And so because of that, that's something you actually have to stay on top of. It's very critical to understand which surcharges specifically are increasing your costs and then negotiate discounts for those surcharges to limit the impact. And some of the common surcharges, I don't have time to go through all of them. There's over 100, but we'll focus on a few. Fuel surcharge, residential surcharge, delivery area surcharge, additional handling for big and bulky, and a peak or a demand surcharge, which is upcoming here in the fourth quarter. Surcharges are kind of their own animal altogether, but there's other areas as well that you can focus on to negotiate contracts. One is a base rate cap. A base rate cap offers some protection each year when base rates increase. They increase a certain percentage, but it's variable. And so a cap is exactly what it sounds. It holds it at a flat percentage to provide some predictability. A couple of other items that can be focused on is being aware of revenue commitments. So if you have a contract with a carrier, some of them require a certain amount of revenue or spend on an ongoing basis to actually receive and maintain discounts. And so it's really critical. It's a very complicated process to understand what those commitments are and then the impact to your discounts if you don't meet those commitments. And then finally, just one tip is to negotiate contracts frequently. Don't wait until a contract is about to expire, or if a carrier adds surcharges, they increase rates, or if your package profile changes, something you start shipping a large item, that increases your cost. Take the opportunity then to negotiate to limit the impact along the way.
Wow, I love those tips. I think they're super useful for anybody who's diving into their contracts. I mean, just that insight alone about the surcharges being 30 to 40% of the cost, I think is really valuable, because sometimes people focus just on the base rates, right, when they're trying to compare their rates. And as you mentioned, this is super complicated. So I recommend that folks check out your LinkedIn content, because I know you do a really good job in drilling down into all of these and explaining them, but also helping people keep abreast of all the changes, because to your point, there's been a lot of changes from a lot of the carriers this year, almost monthly, right? And I know you're a really great resource for people to keep track of that. And of course, brands might want to work with a third party to help navigate this. But as we start to think about wrapping this up, we know we both fundamentally agree, package delivery is a fundamental part of success in e-commerce. And so when we think about the brands that might be in the room, ideally people would transform their thinking around this. It's less of a cost center and more of a superpower, right? Something that could be a growth lever to really help grow your business. And I wonder, like, what are some takeaways you think that help the audience with that?
I would boil it down to three words: opportunity, prioritization, and investment. And so we've talked about the opportunity a little bit already, but the opportunity with delivery is, or can be at least, to increase sales and conversion. You can build customer loyalty, and the one that I happen to focus on a lot is to improve your bottom line through just obsessively managing shipping costs. And so for a brand, you have to actually define what the opportunity is specific to your company. And that might be to increase conversion using a combination, hopefully, of an EDD and fast delivery. It could be to build loyalty by delivering on that customer promise, or to improve profitability through cutting shipping costs. But to be able to capitalize on that opportunity, you have to prioritize delivery. And I continue to see that some retailers don't do that. And it really requires a mindset shift from treating delivery, kind of as you just mentioned, right, from a transactional cost to making it a core part of the customer experience. And each brand has to define their own goals with respect to building a delivery strategy. Once you do that, then you can actually evaluate those goals across shipping cost, delivery speed, and shipping technology. That will identify the gaps, you prioritize the largest ones, and then you move with purpose to actually close them. Finally, investment. It does require some investment. And that investment can be a technology solution, but it always requires investing time and internal resources. You have to really do that to extract value, I think, from delivery. And one area that, again, I happen to be a bit biased toward is to optimize your carrier base. To actually invest the time to do that, that requires evaluating alternative carriers, it requires adding new carriers, and potentially negotiating contracts. Those are all very complex, and a lot of brands don't have the internal expertise to do it. And if that is the case, then you have to go find that external expertise to really help find the partners to help you close those gaps.
Well, I think that's a really powerful takeaway. To your point, it is going to require investment. It's going to require your time. You got to prioritize it. You might need to invest in a technology solution or get some outside resources. But it seems to me, given the impact on the bottom line and also the fact that it can be a growth lever, the ROI is going to be there for a brand that makes that investment. So I think that that's a really great takeaway. Well, thank you, Nate, for coming and sharing all of this with us. We share your passion. We think e-commerce delivery is super important. I think the good news is you don't need to be a big retailer to up-level your home delivery strategy, right? I think that's a really wonderful takeaway from today. Thanks to all of you. You've been a great audience. If you want to learn more about Amazon shipping, come check out our booth in Partner Connect. Also, if you've got questions for Nate, he will be at our booth as well, so come visit him. We'd both love to chat with you. And I think there'll be a QR code to give us feedback on the session. We'd love some feedback so we can get better. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of Accelerate.
Great, thank you.